Hello everyone. In this presentation we're going to learn about another type of drawing called oblique pictorials. So in our last lesson we learned about isometric. Oblique is similar, but it's a little different. So the point of an oblique pictorial is to show a three-dimensional object as a three-dimensional object, kind of like isometric, but the way that you draw each face is a little bit different. So the front of the object is meant to be flush with the page that you're drawing on. So the front of the object is going to have vertical and horizontal lines, but then the depth is represented by an angle. Here you can see in this example we have a 45-degree angle for the depth, but the height and the width is drawn to its true size. So it's similar to isometric, but different. So you only have one angled dimension. The other two dimensions, height and width, are represented as height and width on your page. So there's two common types of oblique pictorials. There's cavalier and cabinet. They're just slightly different. In cavalier, that style you draw the height and the width to its true size and the depth as well. The depth is going to be drawn at an angle. It can be drawn at various angles, usually 30, 45, or 60, 45 being the most common. Just depends on how you want to show the depth. And then the cabinet oblique is really the same process as cavalier. The only difference is the depth is only drawn to half its distance. So it shows less of that depth dimension. So that's the difference between oblique. There's cavalier showing the full height, width, and depth. And there is cabinet, which shows only half of the depth. Usually cabinet is going to look more realistic, like you're looking at the actual object, than cavalier does. So when it comes to creating an oblique pictorial, you want to kind of focus on the height, the width, and the depth so that you're making sure that you're getting the proportion between those dimensions to be the same as what the actual object is. So the same idea behind the way that we did isometric is you're kind of envisioning what faces make up the outside of the object first, and then filling in the interior details afterwards. So we want to see what is the front of the object, and from the front of the object we want to get the overall height and the overall width, and we'll represent that to begin our sketch. So this is going to be a straight-on view of the front of an object. From there, we want to complete, when we say the box, I'm talking about just the outside of the boundaries of the object. So we'll create those cavalier. Again, it's going to be full depth, and cabinet, it would be half depth. So you can see the difference between cavalier and cabinet. The technique in drawing is the same. The only difference is the depth distance. Once you get that outside of the box created, then you can fill in the details. So when you fill in the details, you're going to fill in the details based on what the actual product looks like. So here we're going to go ahead and draw in the lines that make up the edges of the part, starting on the outside faces. You can see we went with the front first, and then the top, and then the side. So you want to start on the outside of the object, completing whatever edges fall along those planes that make up the outside of the object, and then you can fill in the interior details from there. So here you can see taking those light construction lines and then darkening them in, and then you can fill out those interior details. You'll notice that the interior details we're getting because we're getting their location based on the intersections of the lines on the outside of the part. So if we intersect where those lines fall based on creating horizontal, vertical, and then 45-degree lines, then we can figure out where these corners align. And then the same thing goes for the cabinet. It's just half the depth. Once you complete it, you can add some shading to it if you want to add it, that dimension, to make it look a little bit more realistic. Here you can see some examples of some actual products drawn to oblique. They look a little bit more realistic than isometric because of the way each face comes together, it looks a little bit more like you're looking at the actual product than isometric does. Isometric works better if you want a three-dimensional pictorial that you're going to actually dimension, because everything's drawn to its true size and true angles to each other, where oblique doesn't really work well for dimensioning, but it does work better than isometric for just kind of showing what the product's going to really look like. All right, so that is it on oblique pictorials. Now you're going to go ahead and take a look at some more tips in the textbook and draw some oblique images and turn those in by submitting pictures of your sketches. If you have any question, once again, please email me, and I'll see you in the next lesson.